Hello science fans, and welcome to SHE-ensya's Corner. Here we kick back, relax, and talk about science events that's exciting, scary, or fun in the life of your resident Filipina scientist. It's February 28th, science fans. I am Chana Camille Vincicruz Abeledo, your resident Filipina scientist, and welcome to episode 14 of SHE-ensya's Corner. So this week in quarantine, we heard news of the first cloned black-footed ferret. I've discovered some crazy Charles Darwin Misquotes. And yesterday, it was Pokemon Day. This week, we heard news that scientists have successfully cloned a wild black-footed ferret that died more than 30 years ago, according to the United States Fish and Wildlife Service. The young clone named Elizabeth Ann was actually born last December 10, 2020, and she is the first ever native endangered species that was cloned in the United States. Once thought to be globally extinct, black-footed ferrets are one of North America's rarest land animals, clinging to the hem of existence through painstaking captive breeding and reintroduction programs. With her unique DNA, Elizabeth Ann has the potential to introduce the much-needed genetic diversity to the inbred reintroduced population that are very much threatened by disease. Science fact: all black-footed ferrets alive today are the genetic descendants of just 7 animals out of a group of 18 taken from a Wyoming ranch, except of course for Elizabeth Ann. Because they're all interrelated, the small genetic diversity of the current inbred population makes them more vulnerable to disease. But with Elizabeth Ann in the mix, with her unique DNA that is unrelated to everybody else, this creates the possibility of a more robust future population. Because after all, the greater the genetic diversity, the better. Now, the effort that eventually produced Elizabeth Ann began in the 1980s, when Oliver Ryder, the director of conservation genetics at the San Diego Zoo Global, asked Tom Thorne of Wyoming Game and Fish if he would send tissue samples from black-footed ferrets to be preserved in the zoo's frozen zoo. And in 1988, samples from a recently passed ferret named Willa arrived at the San Diego Zoo. But it took 25 years before any further progress to Elizabeth Ann's existence happened, which was when the San Diego Zoo partnered with the conservation biotechnology nonprofit called Revive and Restore to do research on cloning black-footed ferrets. And to clone Willa, Revive and Restore worked with Viagen, a company that has been cloning pets for 15 years now. Elizabeth Ann currently lives in Fort Collins, Colorado, and has been certified to be 100% black-footed ferret by blood tests. Her behavior is normal so far, but she will be closely monitored for her whole life. The frozen zoo also boasts of a collection of cryogenically preserved samples from more than 1,100 species, providing hope for restoring our much-needed biodiversity. In other news, when researching my latest episode on evolution, I couldn't help but touch upon Charles Darwin. And to my shock, apparently a lot of the things that Charles Darwin supposedly said about evolution was actually not from him. For me, it started with this popular quote that allegedly comes from his book, The Origin of the Species, that goes, "It is not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent that survives. It is the one that is most adaptable to change." The source of the quote is actually the writings of Leon C. Megginson, a professor of management and marketing from the Louisiana State University. It was actually his paraphrasing of some of the statements that Charles Darwin had in his book. Now, this opened a can of worms where I found out that another supposed quote from The Origin of the Species that say, "In the struggle for survival, the fittest win out at the expense of their rivals, because they succeed in adapting themselves best to their environment," was also not from Charles Darwin. The quote actually first appeared in a 1960s textbook called Civilizations Past and Present, and was alluding to the implications of Charles Darwin's evolution to human society. And then there's this quote that goes, "In the long history of humankind, and animal kind too, those who learned to collaborate and improvise most effectively have prevailed," which was supposedly from Darwin's Descent of Man. Scholars have reviewed the book thoroughly and have even checked Darwin's letters, and it wasn't from him. But we actually still don't know where it came from. There's actually 3 more popular misquotes that are allegedly Charles Darwin's but actually aren't. This doesn't make them less true, but it is kind of funny, or maybe not, that even in the scientific community, we are very much prone to chismis or changes in the transference of information.
I wanna be the very best.
And finally, to a very exciting event that marks 25 years of virtual adventures. You see, I caught my first Pokemon in 1996, and this began a journey that has lasted for 25 years. For Pokemon fans, we've moved through 8 different regions, many different platforms, and countless Pokemon encounters, all to achieve the dream of becoming the very best. Science fact. One of the coolest things in Pokemon is the Pokedex, a digital encyclopedia created by Professor Oak, which is an invaluable tool to trainers and gives information about all Pokemon in the world after taking a picture of them. It is a very useful tool for trainers because it gives them information about how to best capture Pokemon. But as a scientist, I wonder how it can be applied to the real world. Because you see, our mobile application called Krabbyfire was actually inspired by the Pokedex. Krabbyfire is a free mobile application that is more or less a Pokedex for mangrove crabs. It uses your cell phone camera to take a look at the crabs and identify the species to which they belong to. It's very much useful for fishermen right now because it helps them decide if they want to keep the crabs to grow in their fish ponds. In order to make Krabbyfire, we made use of image analysis to identify unique characteristics in the shell of mangrove crabs so that we can differentiate one species from another. But with advancements in technology for machine learning and artificial intelligence that allows for storing a lot of information in a smaller space, it isn't surprising that an actual Pokedex is close to reality. So while we're waiting for that next amazing Pokemon game, anyone here willing to collaborate to build that future Pokedex? And that's it for SHE-ensya's Corner this week. For more updates about the goings-on at SHE-ensya and your resident Filipina scientist, please follow SHE-ensya on Facebook and SHE-ensya on Instagram. You can also drop by our website at www.sheensya.com. You can also follow my personal IG account at shauna.abeledo. I hope you were able to enjoy and learn something from this week's episode of SHE-ensya's Corner. If you did, I hope you can give this video a thumbs up and also subscribe to our channel. If you have any comments, questions, or suggestions, please don't hesitate to message me, your resident Filipina scientist, in the comments section below. Thank you very much, and see you around!